second floor, we just had our above ceiling inspection last week, so we will begin placing ceiling tiles. But they finished all the MEP, got the light fixtures in there. In the back, you can also see some exit signs, but looking forward to get ceiling tile in there. We also have had the millwork delivered recently, and they began putting together the millwork from the second floor. There's not a photo here, but starting on that. Moving towards the center of the school, we are still on the second floor, finishing up the above ceiling MEP work as well. We also have the soffit framing and the ceiling framing there as well. In the admin areas, above ceiling work continues, ceramic tiles going in the restrooms. This is a photo of one of the hallways in the admin wing. As you can see, the windows are masked, and we have our first coat of paint. In the open area, this masonry is taking place in this wall is a first wall for the auditorium room, and the opening is where the box office will be. There are health science classrooms just off the front entrance of the school. You can see the highlighted area on the plan view. And we're continuing above ceiling work in here as well. In the cafeteria, above ceiling work continues. Sheetrock at the shop, at the soffits have been installed, as well as first coat of paint on them. And you can also see the tile backboard along the right side and in the back as well. In the kitchen, we have the cooler and freezer that have been installed. MEP work's taking place. Walls are framed, and the tile backboard is installation is in progress. These are the stage walls in the auditorium. We finished putting sheetrock and have taped and floated. This is a different angle of the stage area. On the right side, you can still see that there is the dance floor scaffolding, and they're continuing on the high work in the auditorium. These are a couple photos of the CTE area. All the overhead doors throughout the school have been installed. Continuing on with the CTE area, we have block filled the CMU walls and the above ceiling work, electrical, HVAC is all taking place. This is a photo of the band hall from this angle. The practice rooms are in the back of the photo, and you have either storage and offices to the right. Updated photo of the dance hall, block filled CMU, continue overhead work as well. As we move to the west side of the building, we enter the athletics area. In this photo of the locker room, we have the bond beams, CMU bond beams. That will be the base for the lockers as well as the benching. This is another photo of the locker rooms, just showing the plumbing for the showers. They have already begun closing the plumbing up, continuing on with the CMU. Photo of the inside of the weight room. As said shown previously was the exterior. This is just view from the inside. Photo of the practice gym. this is the photo of the competition gym looking at the home stands. They have finished pouring the concrete for the bleachers, and then hard to see, but on the right and left side, they started the formwork for the stairs. The total capacity for the gym will be seating for 1,300. All the masonry work has been completed in the ag barn, and you can see the overhead doors have also been installed. Another photo of the ag barn. These are the wash stalls. On the site, formwork is in progress, heading from the school building to the main entry. And on the overall photo on the far top left corner, the work at Link Road Drive is still in progress and has been slowed with weather, but once the drive is ready for construction traffic, efforts will focus back to the main entry. The roof is almost complete and majority of the building is dried in, and over the past few weeks, testing of the HVAC units have started. Are there any questions on the high school?
All right, moving into 2024 bond projects. First, yes, sir.
Let the record show that Nikki Stevenson should arrive at 6:21. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, moving into 2024 bond, the projects there, starting with the athletic complex. I believe I've met most of you. If not, I'm Ryan Zwicky, and during a break or something, I'd like to meet you individually if I haven't. With the athletics complex, if you look down in your action items, action item 7B, we will move into for approval of GMP 2. Last month you approved GMP 1. For those items to get it, to keep the schedule going, those long lead items, things we need to get out in front of them, keep the project moving forward. Tonight we have another chunk for GMP 2. The Navarro South Elementary, another action item there on action item 7C. We will take possible action on approving the schematic design so we can move into design development and start bringing a lot more certainty to a bunch of big bubbles and boxes and ideas, and start just bringing a whole lot more certainty to it and get the budget tighter and have more to base it on. We've done extensive work the past 2 weeks, being out there on site, doing a little bit more digging, understanding that soil a little bit better, things that we can bring more certainty to, and just finding other ways we can bring the total cost down. That's the problem with one of the issues with the schematic design phase is it's very broad and open to a lot of interpretation, and there's a lot of assumptions, and most of those assumptions are going to err on the side of conservatism. So now we moved in that DD phase, we start tightening all that up. So looking forward to that and bringing that certainty to you as well. Primary and intermediate parking playground improvements. That one is also item A, to take possible action and approve the ranking of contractors for this project. The chiller replacement is coming along. O'Connell Robertson is about 90% complete with those design drawings, and we will be meeting with them again this week to hopefully get that closer to being wrapped up. I don't know if we'll get them totally wrapped up this week, but get that so we can get those things on order. Next comes in the existing elementary and intermediate refreshes. That is ongoing. It kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with this elementary project because of parity, and we don't wanna put too nice of things in one and then the other campus get gypped, so those are kinda coming on hand in hand, and remember that, that work there will not start until that last summer, right before the opening in 2027 as well. So that one's out there a little ways, as well as the junior high remodel, same kind of thing. You gotta get them into the high school before we do that. But that is also in the works at a slower pace a little bit, just because it's a ways out. But just refining quantities, taking measurements of those existing spaces, and getting O'Connell Robertson to get a handle on everything there, and what we can get and line budget to it. Any questions on the 2024 bond? All right, well, I will turn it over to, for action item 7.
Paul, would you like to come up, or would you like me to present? It's up to you.
You can play a solitaire or something.
All right, I'll start with it. Board members, we are presenting to you the recommendation and ranking of the contractors for the project that Mr. Zwicky just shared with you. This is our parking, drives, and playgrounds project that is coming from the funds from the 2021 bond. We had RFP number 24007 that was issued by the district, and those came back to us and were ranked through the criteria that are listed and you are able to view. And so at this time, we are asking as administration to go ahead and be able to take that ranking of the contractors and begin to delegate authority to the superintendent to negotiate and execute a contract in a form that is approved by legal counsel. We'll start first with the number 1 ranked firm and work on a negotiation, and if that does not conclude satisfactory to the district, we will move on to 2, and so on and so forth until we have a contractor. And I'll leave Paul up there for any questions that you may have.
Do we have any questions?
I have a quick question. The slide before said that it made it look like this was coming out of 2024 bond, but I thought our discussion said it's 2021 bond fund.
It is the 2021, it is the 2021 bond funds, but remember that in 2024, part of the money that was issued was from 2021, from the passage of the 2021. So we kind of separated out in there that there's some money that's related to the 2024, to that election, and then there's some money that relates back to the 2021 election.
It's a 24 project with 21 money.
Correct, but and the bonds for that project were finalized and issued with that, and the 2024 bond issue. So part of that 2024 bond issue was from 2021, what was left over, and then part of it is from the 2024, what was approved.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain any motions.
I move to approve the ranking of the contractors to provide construction services for the drives, parking, and playground project as presented by administration, and delegate authority to the superintendent to negotiate and execute a contract in the form approved by legal counsel.
Motion made by Dan, second by Donna. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0. Next action item 7B. Consider and take possible action, approve the guaranteed maximum price amendment for package number 2.
All right, we'll go ahead and bring up Scott and Eric from LPA and Bartlett Kopp to go over. We have a clearer design as we work through the process on our new athletics facility. And then we'll talk about GMP2, which is related to the next items that need to be purchased. So we'll go ahead and start with you, Eric.
Great. Next slide. So overall, we've shown this before, the buildable area in the rear of the high school there. A little refresh there, Highway 123 to the right side of the image, high school. And then as we go behind the high school, we have the drainage canal, floodplain, agricultural use area, as well as the connection road back to Link Road, are all sort of defining the edges of our buildable site area as we work through there. So with this, we've took these constraints and built it a little further into the plan that we'll see here on the next slide. So you can still see in the far right of the image the footprint of the high school. And within there, we've consolidated athletic complex as close to the high school as possible to utilize many of those existing facilities we just saw under construction there, including locker rooms and other facilities. But as we move from the left of the image all the way across, we'll start with parking. We are providing parking on the west side of the stadium, the 6,000 seat stadium, home bleachers and visitor bleachers with a field house. 8-lane track with football, soccer, and all track events within the oval through there. As we continue towards the east, we have another parking lot with approximately 100 parking spaces. To the north of that building there in the center, which is the visitor amenities building. Visitor amenities building will serve both the stadium visiting team as well as baseball, softball, and tennis with visitor amenities, concessions, ticketing, restrooms, as well as some locker room facilities there as well. So 8 tennis courts south of there, and then baseball and softball. All the fields, baseball, softball, and the stadium are artificial turf through there, so we can see some of the logos and designs that are impacted within those. Both the infield and outfield of baseball and softball are artificial. Baseball and softball each seat around 350, as well as have bleachers, bullpens. And then finally, as we move closer to the high school, we can see that the batting cages, we have 4 batting cages in 2 and 2, and each of those are designed to be able to be utilized for baseball and softball. So it'll be multi-use and it'll be scheduled with practice for use of softball and baseball. Lastly, as we look towards the bottom of the image on the south side, we have the grass practice field there that will serve all sports, as well as the throwing areas for the field sports, discus, as well as shot put over there. The next slide, we'll start to see some of the architecture. So this starts on that west side, standing in the parking lot, looking at the press box and back to the stadium on the right hand of the image. And where we see Navarro Panthers is the field house. The field house will consist of locker room for varsity football, as well as coaches' offices, training suites, storage, concessions, ticketing, and restroom for the home side fans, as well as other support facilities like storage and laundry as we go through there. Next slide. Looking at that from the sort of on the track on the opposite side, looking back at home, we see the field house in the far distance with the home grandstands, with the center cross aisle seating below the main cross aisle and additional seating above it, going up to the press box. It is a 2-piece press box, pre-engineered, each 48 feet long, so we can have separation of coaches as well as media, game day operations, PA announcer, etc. And the covered area on the roof for filming and observation during the game. Next slide. This is looking at that smaller parking, that 100-lot parking lot, looking south at the visitor amenity buildings. This will be the primary entrance for both visitors to the stadium here on the right side of the building, and on the left side of the building there will be the main entry for baseball, softball, and tennis. The building can be accessed from each side for both concessions and restrooms, so it's a shared use facility across all of those sports. Next slide. And here's an overall sort of 3D of the entire image. So we can barely see the high school there in the south end of the bottom right corner of the image. A pathway leading out that'll primarily be for athletes between softball, baseball, walking past the batting cages there, down to tennis, and then ultimately to that visitor building and the stadium beyond.
Thank you, Eric. Tonight I'm presenting GMP2 and give a little background on GMP2. We had three major divisions that we covered in GMP2. Those don't look like my slides. I'm gonna go through them, Mandy, in case there are
Those are
somewhere
not
else.
yours.
Yep.
Those are all the slides that I had gotten.
Sorry. Didn't have the ones previously that were there. And it's just done. Okay.
Okay, well, I'll give you an overview of what GMP2, and it was mass site grading, cut and fills. The mass grading is primarily on the football, baseball, softball fields. According to the geotech report, for those fields and the structures, the amenities, the stadium, all the other, the field house, in order for those structures to perform, we've got to get to a 1-inch PVR, and that's potential vertical rise in that soil. As you all know, that's a really great piece of property for farming, not so much for building on. So our mass grading actually, if you looked at the color slide, that shows different areas of the athletic fields that coincide with the geotech report. On some of those fields, we're going down 12 feet. And then we're bringing back up with 4 feet of moisture conditioned existing soils, and then we're bringing in select fill for another 8 feet to get to that 1-inch PVR. So that's a substantial amount of earthwork. That's why we're bringing it to you in an early package. Right now, the baseball, to get the cut and fills done on the baseball is about 6 weeks. Softball is about 10 weeks. Tennis is 6 weeks. And football in the field house is 14 weeks. So we've got to get a jump start. That's why we're bringing this to you in GMP2. The other long lead item is the elevator. So we went ahead and bid the elevator. And then the third item that was in this package is electrical switchgear. Electrical switchgear is a long lead item. That's the main distribution panels. It's not the sub panels right now, it's just the main distribution. So those are the three major items that were in GMP2. We're basically gonna start excavating in mid-March is the plan. And then that's gonna carry on into August. So it's gonna eat up a lot of time just trying to get those fields prepped to where we can bring turf in. And the mass excavation is for the whole site, okay? And we're bringing in select fill for the whole site. The only thing that's not bid in this package related to earthwork is the asphalt and the base material that's under the asphalt. Everything else is in this package. Backfill the buildings and some minor earthwork will be in package 3. Does anybody have any questions related to the scopes that we bid?
Does it all get hauled off, or is it used anywhere else?
Well, the civil engineer has done a great job, so you know we've got the floodplain that we're dealing with, so we can't take anything in there. But what they've done is they've balanced the site up to about, our estimate is about 14,000 cubic feet that's gonna have to get hauled off. Because considering the mass excavation, what we did is we brought up the fields, brought up the structures, and then we are losing some of the material behind that parking lot. So great question. We have tried to mitigate as much haul off as possible. There is still gonna be some.
We started to see some 3D stuff up there, some more conceptual stuff. What's the timeline, what's the?
It's coming quick. So
Okay.
we're moving out of DD right now into CDs. And we'll have CDs second week, that bid set will be going out second week of March. So it's coming quick. And so that's why we keep bringing this thing to you a chunk at a time, is because it is moving fast. I mean, it is a quick design, quick turnaround. I'm gonna say there's not many days that go by during the week that Eric and I aren't in conversation, or Eric's in conversation with Navarro staff and our estimating team. So the process is moving. It's moving pretty quick, but I think right now it's a good process. It's a great looking facility. Any other questions? We look forward to getting GMP 2 approved.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't have anything else. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the guaranteed maximum price amendment for package number 2, GMP number 2, in the amount presented by the administration for the new athletic facilities project, and further authorize the superintendent to negotiate and finalize the terms of the required GMP amendment in a form approved by legal counsel, and to also execute the same.
Second.
I got a motion by Joel, a second by Dan. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to 6C, consider and take possible action to approve schematic design for the new elementary school project.
We'll bring Rita up from LPA to share with you the schematic design for elementary south.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Happy to report on Navarro South Elementary School. So we recently wrapped up schematic design, which is one of the earlier phases of the project. So rather high level at this point, really trying to study site conditions, adjacencies, locations of things in relation to others. So you'll see on the next slide that this is the site as it currently stands. So this is located off of East Martindale Road. It's in the southern portion of the district. So from here, if you went south on 123, it would be just before reaching the intersection of 123 and I-10. It is 20 acres there off of East Martindale. Directly to the south of the property is a residential neighborhood. And really surrounding the rest of it is open land at this point, although development is quickly happening around the area. So I'll walk you through kind of the key components of the site plan as it currently stands now for the elementary school. On the northern portion there, you can see a loop that is shown in a red dashed line. That is the parent drop-off and pickup. So parents would enter off of East Martindale Road and actually continue all the way west and loop back around. And that was by design to intentionally try to provide as much queuing space as possible for vehicles. We definitely want to be able to get all of the traffic off of Martindale Road, have parents stack on the campus itself. So they would loop around there and then drop off students or pick up students at kind of the northern end of the building there. And then they would be able to continue on and exit out to East Martindale Road. On the southern portion of the property, the loop shown in blue would be the bus loop. So similarly, buses would enter off of Martindale there. They would drop off students at the southern end of the building and loop around and exit back out to Martindale. Again, we're making sure to provide enough queuing spaces there for the buses to get them completely off of the road. Also important was to keep vehicles and buses separate from one another, hence the two loops. Parking connects the two. You can see that there in the front of the school. So that would be visitor and staff parking. That would be there at the front. Moving into the school or towards the building there, you can see the main entry as proposed currently is at the yellow arrow. So that would be the main entry. Some play components to the site, potentially play courts there at the north, a play field kind of at the back of the school, and then a central playground and courtyard area there in the middle shown in orange. Other key components to the site that we're currently working through and continuing to investigate are drainage. It's a very, very flat site, so we will be having some drainage channels around the perimeter of the site that will direct water toward these two retention ponds that we're showing at Martindale. That would collect and slowly dissipate the water, but our civil engineering group is continuing to work through exactly what that looks like. That's currently where the site stands. If you go to the next slide, this is a representation of the first floor. So again, rather high level, kind of looking at colored boxes at this point to understand adjacencies, general sizes of things, but the front entry, if you recall, was there kind of central, really at the lower end of that red block there. So everyone would enter through the secure vestibule, be vetted at admin before they would gain access to the rest of the campus, but admin is shown there in the red. Moving north from there in the dark blue is special education and life skills. And then moving north from there in the purple is the gymnasium. The two lighter blue wings that are on the left-hand side of the plan are classroom wings. So 8 classrooms are currently proposed for each grade level right now. These two on the first floor could potentially be 2nd and 3rd grade. Center to the plan there in the yellow is the library space. That would be immediately adjacent to the courtyard. If we're moving south from there, you can see music and theater, and actually art at the north as well as one of the specialized classrooms. And then at the southern portion of the plan is the cafeteria and kitchen. On the next slide is the 2nd floor plan. So gymnasium below, that would be like a 1.5 story volume there. So gymnasium below shown in the purple. The light blue again is the classrooms. So those classroom wings would stack directly above what's on the first floor, and these could potentially be 4th and 5th grade. Centered in this layout is the maker/GT space over the library. And then at the southern portion would be the cafeteria below that. And that's currently where we are with schematic design for the elementary school.
I'll be in trouble if I don't ask. Is
Sure.
there a space for like therapies and that kind of thing?
For like special
speech
education.
therapy?
Yes,
Yeah.
we have speech, dyslexia, intervention. We worked with the special education group to understand what spaces were needed there.
I think it is important to note that we have had several meetings with staff as well as administration to give feedback and thoughts on what they thought is a workable space. Please don't do these things. We've got to have these things, and talking through not only the spaces themselves, but the way that you move through the building, how we get kids to drop off and pick up. I know, Brita, one thing you didn't mention is the parking accessibility at the bus loop, to expand parking when we have events, things like that. So still allowing for parking to be in those spaces to give us that opportunity when we have larger events. That's always something we contend with. Tomorrow night we'll be seeing people park on the side of the road at Link for reading restaurants. So just knowing that when you have those grade level events or big events at an elementary, it's important that we have flexibility with the parking as well. I know some questions you may have as we have with planning this with our various teachers, nurses, paraprofessionals, administrators, is the access point that was designated for right-of-way for the farmer behind us and the land that he still has. And we talked through what that looks like as far as access from the neighborhood. If you've been in Navarro Oaks, those roads are very narrow. People park on both sides of the street, and so it would be incredibly difficult to get buses through there. Also, that was the one complaint we heard at the city when we did have a resident come to protest the school being there, was not wanting buses traveling through the neighborhood. And we feel like that's not going to be a viable option based on the current parking situation in that neighborhood anyway. So we did want to point out that we are looking at potential, walkability, but we do know we will likely have a sidewalk in the front that connects that neighborhood, and that would be the preferred method for neighborhood children to be able to walk to school, which will be a first for us in this district. So talking through what that looks like and how we work through a passover and any of the drainage work that happens at that corner is going to be an important discussion as we continue with the infrastructure of that area.
My question is gonna be, are those topo lines on that slide, or are those drainage lines on that slide?
Those are topo,
Those are topos,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
very flat.
Okay.
And how many parking spots are there in the front?
We don't have that totally finalized yet. We need to determine what the city requirements are and then work with the district to understand how many functionally they would need.
Okay.
So don't have that finalized at this point.
In the pickup line, are the kids coming out of the gym or are they coming from the front?
I'm sorry, I couldn't
For
hear
the
you.
pickup line, because the red line is the pickup line, where are the kids gonna be sitting in the gym?
Yes. that was-
The gym there would be kind of the holding space from what I understand. And then out from the gym to walk to the vehicles or in, there will be covered walkways with canopies there.
Okay, I figured that.
And then into the cafeteria from the bus.
Yep.
Drop off, pickup. Great. Oh, absolutely. We will have the safety fencing.
And then inside the loops, is that parkable, is it?
Yeah, I think
Ground,
that,
dirt?
right now it's not paved.
Okay.
So the intention was overflow parking as it stands now would just be kind of in dirt or grass, but we can continue to study that for sure.
We talked about making sure the curbs were
Yeah, drivable.
Yeah.
drivable curbs so they could go in and park on the grass. We do have already a site within this plan for portables. We are hopeful to be able to pursue a bond that would allow us to go ahead and build the north site. In the case that the growth continues at a faster rate than projected, or we have a delay in bond funding, then we would have the ability to put in some portables closer to that cafeteria site.
And what's the walking time? I know you said sometime, but like from the corner of the front corner into the building, like from the neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
do we have, did you walk that, Robbie, or something?
The backside.
On the backside, okay.
4 minutes.
4 minutes.
So much from the back, okay.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the schematic design for the new elementary school project as presented by the architect and further authorize the architect to proceed to generate and finalize 100% construction documents.
Second.
I got a motion from Becky, a second from Lacey. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to number 8, discussion items. First is taper report.
good evening, Vice President Shive, Superintendent Edley, and members of the school board. Tonight, I am fulfilling a state requirement to cover our Texas Academic Performance Report, in addition to holding a public hearing for questions or comments regarding the information. The slideshow is 82 slides. I promise I will not talk through 82 slides. I know we have many agenda items, but I do want to talk about some important information. First, our taper report this year is on the jump drive that is at your desk or at your table, and there should be 10 folders. I just want to make sure that you have all of that data. I also have prepared binders that I am required to put at the campuses and at our central office. So the binders are here as well. But in the actual jump drive, you'll have our accreditation status, which is one of our requirements. The taper reports, not just for our district, but for each campus, and these are from last year. These are the reports from 23-24. We won't get our this year's reports until this time next year. There's budget information, our campus performance objectives, which you will find on our websites and our campus improvement plans. Our discipline data, which is very, very mild for our school district, proud of that. Our federal report cards are something I've included also. There is some confusion, I think, in the community between the two. The Texas Academic Performance Report is talking strictly to our Texas state data. Then we have federal accountability as well. So the federal report cards, there's information that went out to our parents through Parent Square last week, links to the federal report cards. I've included both in your jump drive. We have our House Bill 3 goals and our progress toward these goals. I'll talk a little bit about that tonight. Our performance in post-secondary institutions, we track that longitudinally, 5 years, 6 years after graduation. And then the public hearing and board presentation slides are what we'll be discussing here shortly. And then last but not least, our STAR performance, which I covered in July at our board meeting, and this is just the updated information, the most current from our Texas reporting system. Any questions so far? Is everyone able to see their slides on the jump drive? So basically, we have several performance reporting systems, and I want you to be aware that parents also have access to this. If they have questions about any of our performance data, any information regarding our advanced academics, our graduation rates, participation rates in programs, these systems are going to help them find that data. The Texas Academic Performance Report is what we're looking at tonight, specifically for our public hearing, but one that I find even more helpful is the Texas Performance Reporting System, which is the TPRS. It takes all the federal accountability information and all the state accountability information and puts it together in one report. We also have the Texas Research Portal for parents to go and look at information for schools. But as they're going through this information, it's important that they use the resources that are available to them. There are glossaries, which I've included in your jump drive. But as they look at this information, we know there are lots of acronyms. If you get our Friday memos, I'm trying very diligently to put to words what those acronyms are. But parents will often be confused between the FR, Federal Report Card, FRC, TAPR, and TPRS. So this slide is just an overview of what those systems are. So we have some updates. We know that the state is currently not releasing A through F ratings. That remains pending, deciding that fate is not mine to know. There are judicial hearings that are being heard right now, but currently we do not have an A through F rating for our districts. And then there is an accountability manual that was posted in May of 2024 with guidance on how our accountability is calculated. It's a very intricate formula. Our parents and any stakeholders can access our taper report at our website, and it's important to note that our website has changed. Our address is now navarroisd.us, and they will be available in our campus libraries or offices. And then the taper report also is on the website, and we will have pages. Mrs. Chelsea worked with me last week to get all of that up and running, so I appreciate her work as our website is constantly under development. Accessing the taper reports, this is just further information on where they are on the Texas Education Agency's website. We have direct links in the PowerPoint presentation that will be posted in the board agenda. And again, accessing the TPRS report, which is the one that combines the federal and the state information. Here are the contents that we have in these reports, and I think it's important that we know in each of the pieces. We definitely have the STAR performance by grade level. We're going to look at each STAR test that is given, 3rd grade through 12th grade sometimes when we have those seniors that are still taking their EOCs. We're going to be looking at school progress. We're going to be talking about our bilingual program, our bilingual education, which currently is our ESL program, our participation rates, our attendance rate, which are both very, very positive, very strong, our annual dropout rate, which is also very positive. We have very little dropout rate, if any, and then our graduation rates. These reports also are going to have our college, career, and military readiness. Remember, they have raised that bar to 88%. A lot of districts are challenged with jumping very, very far to reach that 88%, but we have some practices in place that are helping us to reach that milestone. We also are going to be looking at our college and career readiness, and I'm sorry, the CCMR indicators are a little blurry for me, but if you look carefully, we're talking about the TSI test, which is a college readiness test for those students that want to take dual credit classes. We're looking at completed and received credit for our college prep courses. Our AP, we currently have advanced placement. We talked previously in board meetings about our AP program. Our SAT and ACT, I have some initiatives there where we're trying to become a testing site so that we can test 100% of our students and open it up to students testing as early as their freshman year. We are, again, looking at advanced dual credit classes, and sorry, I can't read the last one. I need to get my glasses on, but graduates enrolled in Texas. Oh, yes. Okay, so now we're looking at when our students graduate, how many of them are pursuing college and what type of entry they are getting after rather than just a four-year college. So we'll be looking at those pieces as well. And then student information, here's all the student information that is included in these reports, and we'll look at some of that very closely as we look at our table reports. Some district and campus performance information that's interesting. Obviously, we know that we look at our total staff number, we look at staff retention rates. Again, this is based on snapshot dates, who remain in our schools from 22 to 23. And we're also going to be looking at how the staff is divided out, how many years of experience they have. I'm happy to report that we have a lot of seasoned veterans in our district right now. It's exciting to see. So these are more district and campus performance pieces in the taper. We're going to be looking at our programs by student enrollment. That includes our bilingual education, which we've been talking about is growing, and our students who are in CTE, gifted and talented, special education, and then all the students are broken out by their specific. We track this data each and every day, and Mrs. Ballard is here, our PIMS clerk, who could talk to you specifically about how some of this data is tracked. And then there is budget information that's included in the taper as well. So overall performance on STAR, if we take the general taper results and we look at where we are in comparison to the state and the region, we do very well when we look at approaches. Orange is Navarro. So if we look at our students that are approaching grade level, we are doing very well. Our formula that we focus on at our campuses is 90-60-30. We want 90% of our students to be at approaching, 60% of our students at minimum to be at meeting, and 30% of our students to mastery. Currently, we are doing well in approaching and meets, but where we fall short when we are compared to our region and our state is in our master's category. And there are lots of factors that play into that, but one of the things we have to look at is the rigor in the classroom. A lot of conversations about instruction and rigor and how important it is, especially if we're going to achieve growth in the masters. This is our district reading data compared to, again, the state and region in a graph. Again, Navarro is the orange, so very similar. We were excelling, and then we went into a pandemic and a change of the test, and we heard the entire state talk about the decline in the reading scores, but we are seeing at this point a significant increase. We're starting to, again, take away from our district and our district, but our state and region. competitors, if you will. And here we are for math. Math is a little more closely aligned. We are looking at new curriculum for math. It is time. Our adoption is well past its life. So we've been reviewing some curriculum, very new curriculum. It was approved by the State Board of Education in December. So we're meeting with teachers right now and doing rubrics and talking about which of our curriculum pieces for math is going to have the most rigor. I wanted to share this with you. This is something that Mrs. Epley has brought to our attention that would be very beneficial. We were doing this behind the scenes, but we finally have created a template so that the board can track our goals. So we do map testing, the measure of academic progress. We've talked about map testing in past board meetings, but I just kind of wanted you to see how we target. I've had some exciting conversations at our elementary campus with Mrs. Wilson about how our kindergartners are performing. They don't take MAP at this point, they're taking the ESGI test, but we do have MAP in our other grade levels, and we track our progress towards our House Bill 3 goals. So on the left-hand side of this document, it's going to show some background of what we are doing, what our levers are to increase our performance and our growth measures. Then we are targeting, again, the 90-60-30, so in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see, based on our House Bill 3 goals, that we want to be at 65% for our students meeting standard this year, and we are on target based on the measures of academic progress that we've given so far to meet that requirement. So this is the measure for reading, and then the next slide, oh sorry, just wrong thing, pardon me. The next slide is our measure for mathematics. Now mathematics, we set a higher percentage. We want 70% of our students to meet standards. So we, if we look at our House Bill 3 goals, we can see that we have steeper climbs in math with good reason. Math is an area that we have been targeting. We're also looking at our CCMR data. This is very important. This is 40% of our high school rating is our CCMR. And if we arrive at an A, more than likely, it carries a heavy weight for our district to be an A. So we have a team, a CCMR team that meets once a month. Many of those members are here with me tonight. And we track student by student each component that plays into the CCMR part. So that could be how many students are completing a pathway, how many students are taking an SAT, an ACT, and TSI. All of those things are measured, and we have a program this year that is helping us. It's called Career Craft. We've shared it with Mrs. Epley. She's attended many of our CCMR meetings, and we were showing her how we're looking at students from 8th grade forward to track their progress towards their CCMR completer. Now we're going to be looking at our specific campus data. I took the percentages that were in the taper and put them in a very colorful bar graph for you to look at. We track every subgroup that counts for our accountability. So on the right-hand side, we're looking at all students. We're looking at our students that are identified as African American, Hispanic, white, 2 or more races, our special education population, the ECODIS, and our emergent bilinguals are, they were previously called EL. So English learners, now they're emergent bilingual students. And I only abbreviated on the slide, Dr. Cobb, because it's small. He always reminds us it's important to say emergent bilingual so that our families know. So these are, again, our coaching percentages for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade when we look at reading. And then these are 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We saw some decline in our junior high scores last year, and it is an area that we have really shined a light on this year to make sure that we have not only alignment from classroom to classroom, but alignment with our assessments and our practices. Now we look at needs. This is where we really are putting our eggs in a basket here. We've got to look at rigor. The only way we will get students to grow a whole year or a year and a half to masters is if we start with rigorous activities and consistently put those in front of our students. So here we are, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and we are, again, targeting 60% of our students. So if you look at 4th grade, we've got a group that has exceeded the 60%. 5th grade has a group that's almost at 80%. But globally, all of those bars should be hitting that 60. Here we are with sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. Again, we've got some very exciting things happening. Our sixth grade team has 60% in multiple groups. Same thing, we were getting very close in seventh grade. Eighth grade, we've got some groups that are soaring, but we also have, if you look at our special education population in all three of those areas, they are not yet meeting grade level standard. In the course, we have 5 in the course exams: English 1, English 2, Algebra, Biology, and U.S. History. So the taper report is going to show you where we are for approaches in both English 1 and English 2. This is the meets. Again, we see a decline in our special education percentages that are, an area to be targeted, but there are some celebrations also for many of our subgroups that are climbing. This is our STAR 3 through 8 math performance. We look at 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade for approaching. Again, we're looking at high percentages. Here's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade approaching. Again, some high percentages, but we are focusing here. This is where our practice and our focus is and has been, is the meets. So 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade are seeing some increases in their percentages. And then here we are, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. This is where we put our biggest work this year, is in the junior high math curriculum and the junior high math program. We really are focusing on how we're raising those students to grade level. Now we're looking at end of course for mathematics. This is our algebra test. If we look at approaches, this looks really pretty. But when we move into meets, this is why algebra has been a focus for us. We have some strong algebra teachers. We have 2 new algebra teachers this year who joined our team. And very impressed when I go into those classrooms and see how they are teaching and the structure of their classrooms. There are some very exciting things happening in algebra classrooms. And if you've had a conversation with one of the algebra teachers, they'll tell you the work is hard because of the new curriculum, but they will also tell you that they're seeing in their assessments, their common assessments, increases in their student performance. Now we're looking at science. This is biology. We moved biology to all freshmen. This is the number of students approaching, again, some high percentages. And then this is our meets. This is where we are focusing, building our honor science classes. If we don't start with honors science class earlier, it's going to be more challenging for these students to get their master's score on their biology test. So Mrs. Cooper, 8th grade science teacher, and I have been talking because her tests have completely changed for the 8th grade test. Same thing for 5th grade. We have new science tests this year, partially detested. They want all completely detested this year, but a lot of the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade tests now have precursors to biology, where we're trying to make sure we're emphasizing those in those grade levels. This is our biology approaching and our end of course biology meeting. And last but not least, our social studies numbers have always been good in approaching, but this again, even though we have a high percentage of students that are passing the test, we need more students to be meeting and mastering the standard. And then here's U.S. history. I will say our middle school social studies is one of the hardest tests that our students take. It is not just a social studies test, it's a reading test. There's a lot of vocabulary, and we are really working very hard with our Region Service Center to bring in a specialist for social studies to plan with our teachers to help them build common assessments. And we are seeing, the principals are going to speak about their campus data here in just a minute, but we are seeing some significant progress with social studies. First of all, understanding the content, but second of all, in how we're delivering social studies instruction. We had to change. There had to be more collaboration and interaction in the classroom. The next few slides, I won't speak through each of these, but this again is showing where we are in comparison to the state and the region overall in our performance on all grades, all subjects. We are continuing to be above the state and above the region in many of our areas. So this is the STAR percentage approaches. Here we are at meets, all grades, all subjects. We're not below everyone in all areas, but we do have work to do. Where we want to be is above that 80% line. We would like to be well, again, 90%. We're looking at 8%, so we're 10% from our target. And here we want to be at 60%. We're at 57. We would like to exceed 60%. Again, this is our approaches for mathematics. We're hitting the 80%. We want to be 90. This is mathematics where we are meeting at only 47%. That number needs to be 60. And if we look at our House Bill 3 goals, it will be 70 moving forward. Last but not least, we're going to look at science. Science, we're almost at 80% for approaching, but we are not almost at 80% for meets. We need to work on that. We are above our state and region in that area, but still 60% is our goal. And last but not least, social studies. This is where we have our biggest lift. Currently, we are just below. If you look at our region, we're in line with the state. Same thing for meets. We are falling below the region and the state for meets, so an area that we are targeting. One of the other pieces of the TAPE report, they look at academic growth, and we chart this by percentage. How are our students doing? Are they growing? Fourth grade reading I put up here, and fourth grade math. Fourth grade reading has really seen some significant growth. If you look at the TAPE report, if you look at the percentages in comparison to the region and state, you're going to see some significant impact in that fourth grade classroom. They've been implementing our HQIM the longest, and I have our reading coach here and our math coach here, and they can talk specifically about some of the things that are happening in the classrooms that are impacting those reading scores. There's fifth grade. These students in fifth grade are going to be the group that had just 1 year of HQIM before they take their assessments. Again, we're seeing some growth, some great growth in those areas. Sixth grade reading, growth scores as well. Seventh grade reading and math. We have some work to do. Those math teachers are working very hard. We have advanced academics in those grade levels this year too, which I'm excited about. And then eighth grade reading and math. There were some exciting things to see in eighth grade last year, but still, our junior high is a campus that we want to give more support to, and I really applaud Mrs. Burton for what she's doing with her PLCs at junior high. Give her opportunity to talk about that. English EOCs and algebra, and then academic growth, all grades, both subjects. This is the percentages that we are seeing for growth. And this is our ELA reading growth, and then all grades mathematics growth. This report is 33 pages, so there's 33 pages of slides like this that seem repetitive, but there's really some good information when you look at them on the thumb drive. Attendance, we've always been strong. 94% is an average for us. There are days that we climb well above that. It kind of depends on if there's a pep rally or not. That does impact our attendance. If it's an ISD or if it's super cold outside, of course that's going to affect our attendance as well. But across the board, we have good attendance. Our absenteeism, which is also reported in the TAPE report, and our dropout rate are non-existent. We do not have students, well, we're tracking our middle school kids that leave and don't come back. We've not had any that I've been aware of. But then they also are looking at students in grades 9 through 12, and we have a minimal amount of students that are considered a dropout. Most of the time, we find them. Again, we are tracking students longitudinally over graduation years for 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years. That's what these graphs are for. Just looking that our students are completing the special ed. Thank you to Mrs. Boyd and her work with the high school for these students. I believe we have 100% of students graduating from special education. That's exceptional and definitely an investment. Again, longitudinal studies are looking at the class. This is the class of 2021, and those that maybe didn't graduate with our foundation program are graduating. So it's showing you again we're 100% for EcoDisc and for SPED, which is excellent. Percentage of our students that are considered college and career ready. This is important. We want to focus. If we have 172 graduates and 55% of those are college and career ready, that's not the number we want to be at. We'd rather be, if we look across, we have some groups close to the 70s. Remember, we want kids to be college or career ready 100%, but 88% is our goal. We do have more students that are military ready as well. We have, during our lunches at the high school, recruiters coming, talking with our students, talking about the advantages. If you don't know what you want to do after high school, there are some things you can do in the armed services that will help you figure out those choices. So it's an excellent opportunity, and a lot of the students didn't know things that they now know about that option. Our average SAT score, if you look at the state and the region, it's higher, but we are definitely talking about how we can infuse into our high schools some prep work for SAT tests. And again, if the students are taking the PSAT as a 9th grader and the SAT as a 10th grader with options to take it again in 11th grade and 12th grade, you're going to see those residual times. But also the Khan Academy has some amazing tutoring opportunities, and we're publishing that on our website for our parents to see, so our parents can use that resource at home. And we even have how-to videos on how they can learn to support their children at home with preparation for an ACT or an SAT. This is just the ethnic distribution of our district. I think it's interesting when you look at ours compared to the state. You can see the percentages. This is our student demographics. Currently, we have 43.3% across the district as economically disadvantaged. That's how we qualified as a title district for the elementary, intermediate, and junior high. A high school is soon to be in that same category. The state has 62%, and then our other areas are not nearly as significant. But students with disciplinary placements, this again is the data from 21-22. We are very, very thorough with expectations, and I think that, yes, that percentage seems a little higher than the state, but I'm sure the high school could talk to. It's a very well-oiled machine, and the students are definitely very compliant with the high school. Here's our enrollment by program. CTE currently has 83 almost percent. Whereas the state is at 73%. Our gifted and talented program are right in line with the state. Our special education program is slightly higher than the state average, but our bilingual ESL numbers are still much lower than the state overall enrollment. Here's our teacher ethnic distribution. It's something that the taper looks at, is the teachers that we hire, how many years of experience they have, and what ethnic background are they. And then our teachers by years of experience. You can see if I have over 20 years of experience, I'm that light lavender on the left. And then over 30 years of experience, I'm that dark number at the top. But the majority of our teachers are between 5 and 20 years of experience, so that's excellent. Violent criminal incidents, we didn't have any to report. There have been no criminal incidents of any nature on our campuses. Thank you for that. Lots of work goes into that. Here are the numbers of what we had for out-of-school suspension, referred to as OSS. We had 33 incidents at the time of this report. The count of our students removed to GAEP, that was 52. And remember, we had mandatory placements for students who were caught with vaping devices. And then the count of students suspended in school suspension is our most common discipline practice across all campuses. We had 279 students, which is still a very low number when you look at our enrollment. I have included for you can't see it on the slide, but this is the discipline data by group, and it shows you at the top what was OSS action and then OSS coding. It's going to tell you sometimes we talk to students about OSS, but they didn't really get OSS. Sometimes they were looking at ISS, and the ISS actions are not always the same number as the ISS placements. We look at our Texas higher education numbers, the number of total graduates. We just create it by attendance in the different institutions, and so you'll see this report that talks about how many of them are going to a 4-year college, a 2-year college, how many of them are going into a different type of program. Some of them are not trackable. That means they haven't enrolled anywhere and they don't have any information. The number is low, but that's always interesting to me that some of them don't have traceable information. but there are some documents in there that will show you the actual colleges that the majority of our kids selected for the 23-24 school year. You'll see our PEAMS financial data, and in the PEAMS financial data, it is very clear to see how much we're spending with each of the different codes, how much we're spending for staffing, how much we're spending for instruction. And then I am always available for a meeting. I know I've heard some of the board members say I'm not as familiar with the paper information or the accountability information. I would love to have time to sit down and talk about it. There are so many intricate pieces, but I know you're all busy, but there's my contact information. And I'm going to now ask Laurel Wilson, our elementary principal, if she'll come and talk a little bit about her data initiatives on her campus, and then we'll pass it to our other principals.
Good evening. I will be brief for you. Our largest initiatives this year emphasize opportunities for students to discuss, collaborate, generate questions, and provide each other with feedback. So we are following a continuation of our PD on 7 steps for language-rich classroom, and campus-wide we are looking for and holding each other accountable for that. Our K through 2 students are also tracking their own data. Pre-K is also tracking their own data. It just looks a little bit different for our littles. And then we have Amplify, our new HQIM that is being rolled out this year, and the teachers are quickly finding their way and navigating through that resource. So we're excited to continue that and build upon that for next year. Special education and ESL subpopulations are a continuous focus for us, it seems like. So we are refining those push in and pull out priorities for ESL and our newcomers, and then shifting our IEP practices to really more that inclusion support versus pull out support. So kiddos are receiving more of their general education curriculum with their peers and their teacher. We are PLC trialing with functional academics, so we're starting our first round of special education PLCs, moving beyond just the classroom with our K through 2 teachers. And then we are doing additional paraprofessional training in specially designed instruction so that they are also aware of what's expected in the special education and gen ed classrooms when they are doing inclusion support. All right.
All right, good evening, board and Ms. Epley. So some of the areas of concern at the intermediates are 3rd grade reading, 4th grade math, and 5th grade science. And a lot of the things that we're doing, for example, for 3rd grade reading, we're doing those across the board. So we're having PLC meetings and analyzing that data for all grade levels. The HQIM, high quality instructional materials, we're using with Fidelity. Some staff changes have been made. We're now aligned with the grade levels below us with using those high quality instructional materials and the resources being used. We have our reading intervention, our RTI, our win time, 40 minutes per day has been built into the schedule. That's the what I need time. And all of our teachers have the data sheets on every single student, every single teacher, subject. We have student-specific intervention plans are required for any student that fails for the 9 weeks. Again, campus-wide, aligning resources in math. This is in regards to the 4th grade math. Again, win time, more of a push of the fact fluency for 3rd and 4th grade. And then again, PLCs and analyzing that data. 5th grade science, staff changes have been made, weekly PLC meetings, pre and post tests. There was a resource change for science. And then the student goal setting is across the board, all students, all core subjects, and the student-led conferences with parents. Any questions for me?
Hi, good evening. So I just wanted to focus a little bit about what we've been working on. When I came in, my goal was to kind of change from what we've been doing when working in a silo to more of a collaborative group. Teachers, not only teachers, but myself as well. I've worked with our instructional coaches. I've worked with Wendy's team. So some of the things that we've been doing, we have our weekly PLC meetings in all 4 core. So Wednesday's our PLC day. We did implement HUIM in both English and math, and that's our Carnegie and Amplify. We've had Region 20 come in for math. Ashley's come in several times this school year and worked with us. We've also worked with our social studies representative from Region 20. We created department leads. This has just math, but I've actually created them in all 4 core subjects. And so our PLCs, although I'm in there, I am not running them. Those department leads are running them. We meet weekly, so they know what to do, and they are taking the ownership, which has been really cool to watch the teachers turn and take the ownership of their kids and their data. I did create a master schedule that allowed having that PLC time and having that common planning time. So every day, each core group is off the same period. So that allows them to collaborate even if it's not a PLC day. And we're looking at common assessments, and we're looking at that data, and that's helping in our PLCs as well, as we're pulling that data every time we take a common assessment. We're also looking at those meets and masters numbers. We're showing growth in meets. We're still working on masters, but like Wendy said, we did create some advanced classes, and as we're creating master schedules for next year, we want to continue that, especially in science, and bring it down to 6th grade. And we're continuing that Region 20 support. And finally, in our special education section, we really looked at hand scheduling our kids and hand scheduling our special ed teachers, and where we can really focus on what our kids need. We redesigned some of our resource classes, and we are continuing to look at that model and what is the best for that model for next year. And finally, we've been working with our special ed team on that specialized design instruction like Laurel talked about. So that's what we've been doing. Any questions?
All right, last but not least, two main points that we have up there. I know it looks like 3, but 2 and 3 are kind of combined together. The number of students that hit the meets level in Algebra 1, similar to what Tori's doing in our PLC meetings. I'm transferring some of the data work that I've done. Those of you that know me, she gave me one slide to work with, but I could have done many slides on the data and many of these things. But the teachers are doing much more of that disaggregation themselves. Where am I struggling? What's the key things that I can do in my classroom? The Carnegie curriculum, our teachers using that, they're seeing how it's better aligned to the questions that are asked on the test, not only in rigor levels, but to me that rigor is really important because how that transfers across everything else. Region 20 is coming in to help us there too. So Ms. McMullen mentioned earlier, 88% for CCMR is now. So how we keep up with that. Career Craft is helping to track that better. I know it says 88% right there. When I made the slide, that's where it was. She had a 90 up there earlier because that's where we are now. So this is where that slide was a couple weeks ago. That's the projection for Career Craft with these seniors right now. The fact that the PGPs are being done with much more fidelity in 8th grade is a huge factor. As many of y'all know, you have to have 4-year completers now in CTE. The fact we are planning down deeper to get them to that is going to help that very much. The using IXL to help kids that are not hitting the TSI in math and science. That's where our place where when Ms. Hansen pulls them in to do the TSI testing, and she looks at how they're going to get there, because some kids aren't hitting it immediately, this is going to help them do that. And something we're going to start. Seeing the kids will be very excited to hear some of this. So seniors will not be happy because it's not going to pertain to them. But we're going to bring back senior release. But you got to have a CCMR credit somewhere or another to have that release. Ms. Hendrick brought this back from a couple of places that she talked to recently. We've heard about a couple other places. It's an incentive. So if by the end of your junior year, you have that CCMR point, however you get it, TSI, dual credit, military, we got to work on that one as far as getting that credit before you get there, because that's a form later. We want that incentive for them. And so this is how we're going to help them get there and do that potentially. There will be ways that we get, let's say if we got a handful of seniors that don't have that CCMR credit yet, there'll be some classes, there'll be some remediation that takes place to get them there. That's obviously we want them all to get there. The expansion of college and military testing. We're going to continue testing all juniors. I have that up there wrong. Is it juniors or seniors, Mr. Mullen? Juniors, yeah, okay, PSAT. And we already have it set up. We have the date. I can't remember what it is right now. All the seniors are going to do ASVAB. Why are we doing it at that point? It has a 2-year limit on it. If we do it too early, it won't count all the way. But we're gonna start testing everyone with the ASVAB. And we're looking at how we can give the ACT as a site. And that would go for all our juniors. We're still in talks with them. I started calling a couple of years ago. We've actually made some decent progress now on possibly doing that on our campus. So, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you, principals. At this point, I will open it up for a public hearing. This is where the participants in the audience are allowed to ask questions or gain information about the presentation that is just presented. A very quiet audience tonight. I hope that the change from the binder to the jump drive will be used.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Mullen, you have to close out the public hearing.
I have to close up the public hearing. If there are no more input or comments from the audience or participants, I will now close out our public hearing. Thank you, Ms. Mullen. Any other further questions?
I have a comment and a couple of questions. So, first off, I want to tell the principals, I think what y'all are doing to help improve the scores, I'm really glad y'all did that part. I think that the work that you're doing is commendable, and I appreciate what you guys have done to do that. One thing about the TIPA report that I do find valuable is that it does do the comparison between the years. And that wasn't really shown, in how that is. And I know in looking at the data, 4th grade had a great year. Everybody went up in every category in both math and reading. Grade 5 went up in all areas except masters. Grade 6 went up in their reading in all 3 areas. And as Mr. Scarborough mentioned, the masters and meets for Algebra 1 also went up. But in all of our other areas, we dipped in every other area. And that's a concern. And I know that, we are 5 years out from COVID, and Navarro was very unique to not have to be out of school as much. I know we have a lot of movement coming in. So I only say that to say this, and based on what I'm hearing from the principals, it sounds like we have done what we need to do to identify what caused some of those dips. And so when we start to look at the MOI data, I think the question I would have, and it doesn't have to be answered now because this could be a long answer, is whether or not we are seeing that those strategies are working in our MOI data so that we don't see similar dips this year between 24 and 25. Because, in some categories we went down as much as 20 points. And I know in some cases everybody, yes, the test changed, yes, the state saw dips, but in some of the areas we saw much bigger dips. And that's concerning for me in looking at data. And so I just want to make sure that, and I would just like to know, just for my own personal knowledge, how that looks. And like I said, that doesn't need to be answered now. I just want to kind of throw that out there, that I think that's an important thing that I would like to see if we're on track to not see that dip again. And I don't think any of the principals want to see that dip again either, obviously from the efforts. So please don't take my question to be critical in any way, but it is something that concerns me when I look at the data. And then the only other thing would be a follow-up for the high school, in that I'd like to know a little bit more later, and I can get this in an email or whatever, what we're doing specifically to try to keep kids on that 4-year CTE track, because that's a super hard thing to do. And those are just things that I would like follow up on, just so that I can answer some of those questions on my end. So that was all, but thank you.
Thank you. I want to say that the data is very important to our team. That's why the team is here. It's something we look at daily. We look at benchmark data. We have these common assessments that we've discussed tonight, and those are our trackers. Before, we did have data sources, but they weren't consistent and they weren't routine and aligned. So definitely, yes, I'm like you, Lacey. My credibility is directly tied to a dip. So I am always looking at data with the team and finding out where our growth measures are lacking and our growth measures are strong. So there are some exciting things on the table. Kindergarten is an area we shine a light on this year. I'm very excited to see some of our kinder data. And that's where it starts, our foundational pieces. We know how important it is in those formative years. But yes, we will get you the CCMR information. We do meet monthly and have definite targets at those meetings. And Mrs. Gossett is here tonight, our new CCMR director, and so she is leading the charge with that information, so we will definitely get that to you as well. Any other questions for myself or the team? Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. For that, move on to discussion item B, priority 1, discussion recruiting, hiring, coaching, and retaining high-quality teachers and staff to support student outcomes.
Good evening to the team of 8. I'm David Kaufman. I'm proud to be the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources and School Leadership here in Navarro, and appreciate the opportunity tonight to present on the priority 1 on our strategic plan for recruiting, hiring, coaching, retaining high-quality teachers and staff to support student outcomes. You'll note on the TAPER report there is a statistic on there which is the teacher retention. Really the teacher turnover rate for the last year. So what I'll be focusing on tonight is that metric on teacher turnover. So when we think about the collaborative vision and strategic plan, it is, I think, notable that priority 1 is to recruit and hire, coach, and retain our high-quality teachers and staff in order to support our student outcomes. And when you go back down to the cornerstones that undergird all of the work that we're doing, it's again shows there as cornerstone number 2, employee recruitment and retention, with specific plans for how to recruit people, but also how to keep them when they're here. And so when we're thinking about retention, though, I really want to think about the target for retention. It's purposeful retention, not to retain everybody, but to retain the retention that supports student outcomes and our other priorities. So when we think about the other priorities that our district has, the purpose of our retaining people is in order to maximize academic performance, to maximize our co-curricular and other activities for students, and to ensure that we have this top level district ranking. And so we want to retain people in order to achieve those goals. So that means that our goal isn't always 0 turnover, right? We're not looking for 0 turnover, we're looking for a healthy turnover, for turnover that happens at the right time for the right reasons. And so 3 questions I'd like us to ask are, 1, are people leaving for career growth or personal opportunities? If they are, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That means we're growing and developing great people who are finding other opportunities, or we are encouraging life balance and people are making choices that help them to lead a more satisfactory life. They're not running away from Navarro, they're leaving to somewhere else. Question number 2 is, are we replacing those that we lose with stronger matches, people who are even better fits for the position and the work they're doing? Sometimes turnover that can be regrettable turns into a blessing because you find somebody who's really going to be the right person to support our goals. And then question number 3, are we retaining our top talent while allowing for strategic change? So we want to be really building in strategic retention so that we're keeping the best people who are the best fit for what we're doing here, and then also leaving space to grow because we know that some of the new people we bring on board are dynamic and can really move us forward. So I just want us to keep that in mind, that the goal of retention isn't 100%. But what is a healthy number? We don't have that defined right now in our district. So that is something we can be thinking about going forward, is what is the right number for Navarro in this time and age of to support our student growth. So turning to the TAPER report that Wendy just reported on, the turnover report is listed in there, and we went back and looked at the turnover rate for the last 5 years on the last TAPER reports and forecast what our turnover rate will be for this year. So if you just jump ahead to the second to the right there where it shows 2023-24, that 19.8% turnover is what's reported on this year's TAPER report. Then if you work backwards from there, you'll see that it's kind of hovered around that number, higher the year before, 22.6, but then a little bit lower the year before, and then a little higher the year before, and it's zigzagging around that 20% rate, since making kind of a big jump from the 2019-20 school year. So we're kind of hovering on that 20% level right there. When we look ahead to next year's TAPER report, which won't come out for another year, but we already know the data that's gonna be in there. And that data suggests that we're gonna be at around an 18.2% turnover rate from last year to this year. So is that the right number? I would suggest that that's probably a little higher than what we want it to be in terms of what healthy turnover is. But to really know that, we have to look at the details. I want to offer another comparison here. That was year to year. This is district to district. So this is the 2023-24 taper report for various districts in our area. So you'll see Navarro is in the middle there at the 19.8%. If you go across from left to right, you'll see that there are a few surrounding districts that are very close to ours, maybe slightly below ours. And then there's two that are considerably higher than ours in terms of that rate. And then the yellow line across the center there is the state average, which is 19.1%. So when you look at our 19.8% turnover rate, it's just slightly higher than the state average of 19.1%. So that just puts in context where Navarro sits compared to our comparable districts. So what does that number mean though? When we dig into where that number comes from, how they calculate it on the taper report, it's basically calculated from the number of teachers who were here in the fall of last year to the number of teachers who are here in the fall this year, and how many are not here any longer. That's how they calculate the percentage. So when you're looking at that 2023-24 taper report, we're really looking at the number of teachers who were here last fall who had returned from the previous fall. So we're really looking at teachers here 2 years ago, how many were left 1 year ago. So putting that into actual numbers, of the 154 teachers that were reported in the PEMS, the data system that feeds into taper, on a snapshot date, which is the last Friday in October every year, of the 154 teachers who were employed at that time, 19.8% were no longer here the following year. So that's what that looks like. So when you calculate that, what the taper report suggests is that we had 30.5 teachers leave. I think this is really important because then you can start to put names to teachers, you can start to put positions, and you start to see what were the reasons why people left and what was the impact of their leaving, positive or negative. So I was not here then. What I was able to discover digging through our data is I was able to identify 29 teachers who left from November 2022, which would be roughly that period of when the snapshot was, to the following October of 2023. So the exact, why there's a discrepancy between the numbers that I found in our systems and paper, I don't know exactly, but it's close, and we're working to align those so we can have a perfectly predictable number in the future. So 29 teachers left during that time. When you look at that, 3 of them left mid-year, right? Those can be the most impactful leaves, either because they create a disruption in learning for the kids, or they represent a necessary turnover, right? So sometimes people make bad decisions that cause us to need to separate them in the middle of the year. That's that can be a good thing because we're creating a better space for kids. But generally speaking, the mid-year ones are the ones we want to avoid. We had 3 of that 29. 25 left at the end of the year, right, which is the ideal time because that gives us an opportunity to staff for the coming year. And then 1 left at the start of the year. The context when you're looking 2 years ago is that, first of all, we had the superintendent transitions happening that year. Superintendent Epley came in April of the month later, 25 people left, right? So this is reporting really on the work of the context of the previous administration. And you know that there was the turnover and some changes in that leadership during that whole year. Moving to the projected rate then, so we're looking really at the more current data, looking at the teachers who were here this fall, and how many of them had left from the previous year. So the taper report last year indicates that they had 170 teachers employed on snapshot day 2023, and we know from looking at our own data right now that 31 left over the course of that year. So that would project that we're looking at an 18.2% turnover rate for this next report. Of those, 2 retired in December, so those were mid-years, but they retired, right? They didn't just leave, they retired because they were eligible under TRS to retire, and they chose to do so. 26 left at the end of the year, and then 2 left this year just before school started. And you all know about those, we reported those. Those were both due to family health issues. So that's the contest we're looking at. One left in September, and that was for personal reasons. The context here, again, this is the superintendent's first full year in the district, and so with leadership change, sometimes people discover that this is not the right fit for me anymore because of the direction the district's going, or for, and then there's just the natural numbers of people leaving. Then you also have the context of the junior high leadership transitions last year, and again, when you're thinking of turnover, you always are going to expect a bump in turnover when you have new leadership, just with people figuring out if this is the right fit for me any longer. So that's some context for the numbers. So, but we do want to improve that. Again, we don't have a specific number identified as our goal for the district, but we do want to improve the numbers. So how do we do that? So what some of the research says, and this comes from the report that was written by a couple scholars who were working with an organization called Upbeat, which is focusing on how do you improve conditions and retain people. And one of the key findings from that work, which has been repeated over many years, is that school working conditions are strong predictors of teacher retention, right? Is this a good place for me to work? Am I supported? How do I feel here? And in looking at those working conditions in this survey study they did, you can't really read the fine print there probably, but that shows kind of the connection between how teachers answered on this survey and whether they stayed in the school or not. And so those top three on the list there, where you show that for every 10% increase in how people responded to those survey questions, there was a 5.5% increase actually it's the opposite. For every 10% worsening of those responses, 5.5% more people left. So that is, so the top one there is belonging and well-being as the one that's the biggest indicator they found, the biggest indicator. When they're talking about belonging and well-being, it's talking about things about the connection that people feel, the support they receive, their capacity to manage the stress that goes with the work, their work-life balance that they experience, and whether they feel appreciated. So knowing that belonging and well-being is a strong predictor of people staying in their schools. The second one on the list is self-efficacy, and that's basically that sense of success. I'm doing work that's making a difference in the lives of kids. That also addresses the school environment, whether this is a place they feel they can be successful in their work, the professional development they receive, whether they feel they're growing and learning things that will help them be better teachers, and whether it's a safe and orderly environment where they feel that they can focus on teaching and learning. So self-efficacy is, on their study, the second highest predictor of people staying. Then the third highest on there, and that's as far as we're going to go, is the third highest, is satisfaction and purpose. And that is, really a lot of that is related to the working conditions. Do I feel like, people go into teaching because they want to make a difference. And it's a very satisfying, rewarding profession. If they continue to feel that sense of this is something I'm passionate about, this is something that's my life mission, they're more likely to stay. When they start to lose that fire, then that starts to take away their satisfaction and the purpose in what they're doing. So how can we help our teachers to maintain that fire? That's some of what this research says. But that's general, right? So what we really wanted to do this year was to focus on what's keeping what do our teachers, what keeps them here, and what makes them consider leaving here. And so you already know that we had tackled a stay interview project. So in the fall, I asked for our principals to each name 5 teachers who they felt like, among the many teachers who they want to keep, 5 that these are teachers I want to keep, right? These are people we want to keep in my school for next year. I don't want to lose them. And so for those 20 teachers, I did a stay interview for each one, in which we asked kind of basically 5 simple questions. What do you look forward to when you come to work? Why do you stay here? What can we do to support you better? What are you learning here? And then the killer question, which is, when was the last time that you actually considered leaving, and why? And that's a very interesting question, because people have just explained to you how they love the district, how they will never leave, this is where I'm going to retire. And you ask, when was the last time you considered leaving? 8 a.m., right? And so then you recognize that, and then it comes out like, I'm not planning on leaving, I'm not going to leave, but I sure had to think about it when I got here at 8 o'clock and there was X, Y, and Z waiting for me, or this happened to me, and so I thought about leaving. So it really gets you some honest answers about not only why are they staying, but also what are the things that are getting at them that make them feel less successful. So there's a lot came out of those interviews. The number one thing for me that came out of those interviews is the importance of our direct supervisors doing those, not me, right? Because I learned so much about the teachers and the people who are in the study. That's gonna help me do a better job. But when our principals do the state interviews with their teachers, when our directors do the state interviews with their teams, that's when they're gonna really hear, and their team members are gonna hear that their supervisor really values and wants to hear from them, right? And then also the supervisors are gonna hear, here's how I can better support my people. These are the hot spots that are making their job frustrating. This is what's making them think about leaving. And then also this is what's making them stay. So they were very valuable experiences for me, but I also know that when our directors and supervisors start doing it, they're going to really benefit from that as well. So what were some of the findings from those state interviews though? Some of the key things that really stood out from the interviews, knowing, with a little disclaimer on the side there, every interview was unique. There no two teachers identified the same responses, right? Everyone had like their different personalized reasons for being here and staying here. But some of the themes that came up a lot were community. And you all know this, like the people value being in part of a tight-knit community. They like the small town feel. They like knowing everybody. They like that people know them. They like that their own children attend the schools here, and that's part of what either brought them here or what keeps them here. And they appreciate the support from families in the community. And that all comes from that feeling of community that we get here in Navarro. One person said, quote, "I handpicked Navarro for my family," right? And she said, "I stay because I chose to be here for her family, not just for herself." So the community piece is huge. Now, you all raised that question, I think. How do you maintain that small town feel? How do you maintain that community that's tight-knit when we have the growth coming as well? So that's something for us all to really think about, is how do we maintain what makes it special while embracing and welcoming the growth that's inevitable. A second factor that really came into their conversations, and it's red because the red one, I'll explain why it's red in a minute. But students came up in all the conversations. The growth and the learning that the students were experiencing, the relationships they have with the kids, and then really just how awesome the kids are, right? They just love the Navarro kids, which I can certainly understand. I've met so many kids here who I visit in classrooms, and from the kids who work in our office, and from attending events, and these are great kids. And so the students here really are a powerful motivator for people to stay in our district. The reason that's red is because there's like the flip side to that, which is kind of like a warning, like that, because part of the conversation about the students was sometimes the kids are more and more difficult each year. And there were other comments like that, kind of acknowledging that the population's changing some, and that it's a little more challenging sometimes to work with the kids. I think that's just something to really put our fingers on and think about. How do we maintain that belief in our kids even as the kids change, right? Our Navarro kids are awesome because they're Navarro kids, not because they're the old Navarro kids, right? And so if we can really find ways in our district to avoid that new Navarro and old Navarro gap that could form, it's really gonna have a factor to play in it. Because people really want, we want to maintain that belief that it's the Navarro kids, no matter who our kids are, if that makes sense. So the third piece that came up a lot were colleagues. People appreciated the people they work with. They genuinely feel the sense of fellowship and relationships that they have with them, the support they get from each other, knowing that they can go to another teammate and ask for help if they need it. That collaboration that takes place, whether it's the formal collaboration and having the shared meeting time, the PLC time that our principals talked about, or just the informal collaboration and support that they get from each other. And so the colleagues really play an important part. Although one person noted, right, that it felt different this year because at convocation, I didn't know everybody, right? I used to feel like I knew everybody, and now there's more new people, and it's starting to feel a little bit less like that small community feel. So just another thing to keep an eye on. Support from administrators played a big part in people. People like their principals. They like who they work for. And I've heard that before. People don't quit a job, they quit a boss. And so the fact that our state interviews indicated that people really appreciate their administrative team and the support they get was really important. They talked about the problem solving, that if they have a problem or a challenge, that they get assistance with trying to solve the problem. They talked a lot about discipline support, just being able to have support to maintain an effective learning environment, even if kids might be challenging with some behaviors. They talked about resources, being able to get the things they needed to teach. And they talked about just feeling valued and feeling respected. So one teacher said, I feel like my opinions matter, speaking specifically about the input that her principal asked her to provide. So that was a big factor. And then the final piece I just kind of grouped under working conditions. This really, again, addresses things like the work-life balance. Do I feel like this workload allows me to live my other life as well? The curriculum that they receive, there were comments about the value they placed in the new curriculum materials that we have. There are also a lot of comments about the appreciation for having autonomy to choose what they teach. Those comments about the autonomy came a little bit more often from people who taught subjects that were perhaps electives or not math, reading, science, social studies. So that's, again, something that I made that red, because that's something for us to really pay attention to. As we look at the strength and the power of some of these high quality instructional materials, and we really look at some of these teaching practices that we know, based on research and based on what we've seen, are going to be highly effective, how do we make those things happen in a way that doesn't feel like people are losing their ability to do the craft of teaching and to make their own decisions about teaching? So just something, again, for us to really think about, keeping that balance. And I just wanted to note that someone, there was a really, one comment was, I've seen other school districts, so I know the grass isn't always greener elsewhere. So just, again, something for us to think about is how do we make sure that we're highlighting the things that are awesome about Navarro while also addressing the challenges that we know are there. So those are just some of the key findings that came out of the retention interviews. So what are we doing with all this? So there are a lot of retention strategies that were already in place and kind of that we're moving forward, and others that we'll be really trying to strengthen. The first one I put on the list there is the effective hiring. The first step in retaining someone is hiring the right person to begin with, right? If you hire someone who's a good match for our community, if you hire someone who's effective at their job, they're much more likely to stay. So that piece about really making sure that we're using effective hiring practices and finding the good matches to begin with. Also then engaging with our employees, really making sure that we understand our teachers. And I've been talking about teachers because that's where we started. This really applies to all of our valued employees as well, because we know that the retention in all of our support services and every department is important for our kids. So engaging with our people. So with the stay interviews, it's something we've discussed at our leadership meetings. I've begun having sample stay interviews with each of our department leaders, either their principals and our department heads, to kind of model the experience for them. It's something that will supplement the conversations they're already having with teachers. Our supervisors and our principals already have relationships and already listening to their teachers. But this is a structured, kind of formal way to show that. And so they've agreed that they will begin the process of doing some of the stay interviews this year. And we'll see how it goes, and we'll perhaps implement a plan for next year where we ask everyone to do a state interview with everyone every year as part of their supervision. But we'll see how it goes, but we do have the state interviews underway. An employee survey, so these were individual experiences that people described. It's qualitative data, and so there's value to quantitative data as well. And so with the board blessing, we've contracted with TASB to provide an employee survey that will go to all of our employees with standardized questions that we can then kind of quantify. How important are these different things to people? How do people feel about stuff? So that employee survey is scheduled to start in April and to conclude within a 2-week window, and then we'll have that data in May, and then some more detailed data probably at the end of the year that we can use to really look at what we need to focus on and improve. I have copies of the sample survey if anyone wants to take a look at it tonight. And then some of this stuff's ongoing. The checkpoints that I've been part of that Ms. Epley has introduced, it provides an opportunity every time to listen to teachers and to listen to paraprofessionals on each campus to learn what is their experience and what do they need from us. The advisory groups that are taking place, that's a lot of information where they get to hear directly, they get to speak directly to the superintendent about the things that they're experiencing. So those are other ways that we can continue to engage staff. Inclusive decision-making, right? How do we balance that so that we're not, so that we're including voice of the people closest to the work in making those decisions? So that's just something that's become part of the conversation at our various leadership meetings. Collaboration, including effective PLCs. People want to work together with people that they respect. And so continuing to strengthen that collaboration. Our principals talked about that in their segment earlier tonight. Finding ways to build the structure so that time is available for people for that collaboration. Continuing to look at the support that students need. So the student behavior support. So people would want support with behavior. That support can look like coming in to intervene, but that support can also look like developing strategies and helping people develop their own capacity to address student behavior. And so, so that's something that's continuing, and that in conjunction with our behavior specialists are looking to support that. One example of that is our behavior support team with Ms. Voigt's assistance is preparing some additional behavior management training for our bus drivers as a response to a request for them to have more strategies to work with our kids. So support, special education came up with that idea as well, but a lot of the support really comes around our principals and our assistant principals really developing their capacity to provide that support. So I think our principals do a great job with that, but we all know that we can always do better. So looking at ways that we can ensure that our teachers feel that support. Another piece of we may not always think of it as a retention strategy, but professional learning is one of the strongest retention strategies that I think we have, which is providing teachers the opportunity to grow and learn as professionals so they feel that own sense of satisfaction of growing and learning, but also equipping them to be more, to have greater efficacy with being able to have the impact on students that they want to have. But we know that just from listening to the teachers that I talked to, we know that professional learning needs to be relevant to what they're doing. They need to feel like this is going to make me a better teacher tomorrow, not just kind of pie in the sky. It needs to be engaging, so they feel like connected as an adult learner. It needs to be high quality, and our principals did a great job earlier this year of kind of intervening when we had a contracted piece from outside come in and it wasn't high quality, and they stepped in and said, you know what, we're done for the day, thank you very much. We're going to take them back and do something useful with their time because this is not good for them right now. That type of intervention, teachers value that a lot. They appreciate that their time is not being wasted because they want it to be high quality. And then differentiated, because people want, everyone, just like our kids, our teachers are at different places with their own learning. So making sure that we're providing options. Something I'm excited about seeing is at our recent professional development, the teachers were doing a lot of the leading of the professional development. So they're teaching their peers things that they know and that they're good at. That elevates their own professionalism, but it also makes it helps other people to hear what is being said. So they value the guidance from people who are in the trenches doing the same work they're doing. So that's exciting to see, and I think we're going to be seeing more and more of that. And then really, again, going back to that point about our changing demographics and changing population, making sure that we are looking ahead and addressing the needs of our evolving student body. So making sure that we are preparing our teachers to differentiate, so that it's not just like, well, these kids, this has always worked for the kids in the past. Well, some of our kids are different now. So how can we differentiate? So what you were doing in the past that worked with this group, you can keep doing that, but also then providing what this other group needs. Making sure we're providing, as our special education population grows, making sure that people have the capacity and skills to serve that group. As our emergent bilingual student population grows, making sure that our teachers are all equipped with the capacity to help with language acquisition and bilingual education and ESL. And then particularly making sure that our professional development addresses how we can support student behavior and mental health issues. One piece that we're pursuing with Texas State this year is to potentially offer our teachers through a selection process, our aspiring leaders, an opportunity to participate in a cohort in the master's program for educational administration with Texas State. And we will be partnering with 3 other nearby districts to build a cohort where they would be able to participate and earn their master's degrees. That would not be funded fully by the district, but it's something where we would be considering is there a part of it that the district can provide? For example, Texas State suggested that some districts are providing textbooks, which can be a costly thing for teachers. It's not as costly as us paying for the whole master's degree, but $400 for textbooks to provide an experience for teachers that can help them grow professionally. That would do two things. One, it would, again, signal that we value the professional growth of our teachers and we want to support it. And secondly, it would build a greater pool of internal candidates so that when we do have an assistant principal opening, we have our own teachers to draw from and we know that we have a good pool. So that's something that we're in the process of working out with Texas State. The last two bullets are pretty easy. Compensation, you know about this. We have the compensation task force, which is meeting to look at what our options are for next year. Much of which is pending legislation because we don't really know what the rules are yet or what the resources are. But the compensation task force is continuing to play a part in making those decisions. And then the TIA, which is the teacher incentive allocation, just want to remind people that with our plan, what our numbers are from the state is that for each teacher who meets the criteria for that at the beginning level, that's roughly $5,000 or more on their paycheck. For those who reach the middle level, 11,000-ish, it depends on which school they're at, $11,000. And for those who reach the highest level, that's $20,000 or $21,000 per year in addition to their current salary. So that's another tool that we hope to keep some of our high performers. And then finally, the last one I mentioned is workload, and that's just something to really pay attention to. That's the biggest factor that came up when people started saying like why they might leave, right? It's like, it's not Navarro, it's just too much work, right? Teaching is becoming so hard. Teaching is becoming so all-inclusive of people's time that, so it's something for us to really attend to. Making sure that we're not putting more on teachers than we need to, and figuring out always what can we take off each time we add something new. And another piece of that, which I'm excited about when I discovered it here is the additional work days that have been provided in the school calendar. Pacing out and providing people some time so that as that work builds up, that there's time when they can just stop and say, you know what, kids are home today, I can get some of this stuff done. Strategies like that, I think, again, are appreciated and can really help us move forward. So I mentioned the opinion survey, that will be coming. We'll report those findings to the board when that survey data comes back. I don't know what meeting that will be at, but we'll get an exact timeline of when we're gonna have that data available, and then we can figure out when the board wants to hear it. But it covers several of those topics that we talked about today in the sample survey, which we will get to customize to our own use. And so as I mentioned, we're just gonna be focusing on retention tonight as part of that 4-pronged strategy for improving our human resources. And with that, I have happy to take any questions or discussion.
I do have one question, just on that master's cohort. I know it's in the planning stages and everything, but would it just be masters in administration, or would it be in other areas, say special ed or?
So the current conversation we're having is around the administration piece, although I think that looking for additional opportunities so that people who want to pursue instructional leadership, curriculum, special education, other categories would be great. But the particular group that we approached us and that we're working with is in the educational administration department.
Right, I will say that that's the Texas State group that we're working with is administration. TLU has a special education master's, and it's a fast track, and so we'll be talking to them about that.
First, I just want to say thank you for being such an amazing HR leader here for our district. You're very strategic, very intentional, and listening to the presentation and all of the things you're doing is just phenomenal, so thank you. I have to dig real deep to find any recommendations for that. I have one, because I am such a passionate believer of stay interviews. When a stay interview is done by the direct supervisor, that can sometimes limit the feedback, the transparent feedback about their leadership. And so the only thing I would recommend, unless it's something you've already thought of, is maybe some clear communication with teachers that they can do a stay interview anytime they want to with any leader, any member of administration, that might give them the avenue to give some really transparent feedback about their leaders without fear of retaliation, of course.
Thank you, that's a great point.
But seriously, otherwise, thank you so much
Well, thank
for
you.
all of the work you do.
And I would just, I appreciate that, and I want to note just how much of the structure and the framework for all this is already in place when I got here, so I'm privileged to kind of step into a lot of great systems that are already starting. But yeah, I'm excited to do this work.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Great job, thank you, sir.
Okay, moving right along, any questions on the campus and department activity reports? No questions, we'll move into the superintendent's report.
Move the slide for me, please. So we're going to start with enrollment. You can see here that since our last reporting, we've had 3 additional students at the elementary, 2 at the intermediate, 12 at our junior high, and 2 at the high school. You'll see that things shift as to where the kids are coming in from. The previous month, we saw a 20 student jump at the elementary. But the growth is still coming, and so we are continuing to prepare. I did include in your documents this month the breakdown of the class sizes so that you can see how that growth is being adjusted by per teacher, and that is a daily thing that we're looking at. And we actually just made an appointment today at the elementary to address how we're utilizing paraprofessionals to support our Pegasus group as it grows. We are dipping a bit in the attendance rate. 94% is what we're budgeting off of as our average. So you see that's a slight dip there. We do know there's been quite a lot of crowds going around. So we are continuing to talk through how we are contacting students that are absent. I think some of the old practices, because we were smaller, were that the nurse could make those phone calls. And so we've been talking about some system changes that allow for a more direct approach with that teacher to contact in and say things like, hey, sure missed you today. Be sure to check out the Google Classroom, Mom and Dad, so that if they're able to do any work, it's there. When you return, you know that it's there for you to get those things. And that just is that growth piece we're talking about. And then how do we balance that so that teachers who've been here don't see it as I lost that perk of someone else made those calls for me, but we continue to have that professional and personal connection with students. So those are some of those growing pains, but you do see that change in enrollment. So our next piece is the activities calendar, and as you know, it is spring. We are already going to see this place in full swing tomorrow as we have several events. Our elementary reading restaurant, if you haven't had a chance to come see that, it's a really special night where kids are not only eating together and having that community sense that we talked about needing to preserve, but they're able to read to their families and anyone else who asks them to read to them as well. We have our ESL parent nights, which have been incredibly successful, and our compensation task force will be meeting again. We'll also have our special education family night on the 27th. As we go into March, you're going to see our Winter Guard contest on the 1st. We start celebrating all of our weeks. Of course, it's Theater and Education Month. Education Diagnostician Week is on the 3rd, as well as the National School Breakfast Week and School Social Worker Week. And District 1 I Play will have their first competition. Our spring ASVAB will be delivered on the 4th, and our first grade music performance will happen on that night as well. On the 5th, junior high UIL concert and sight reading will be happening. And the 5th through the 8th, some of our members of this board will be attending governance camp. On the 7th, and you can see the evidence of it on the stage, you will have the performance at 6 p.m. and 7:15 of the spring musical here at the intermediate, which is Susical, the musical. And there are 50 students performing and 25 technicians. So we absolutely saw that program explode, and it's going to be an awesome production. So very excited to see that. The 14th, we will have a student early release and a staff work day. I know Dr. Kaufman talked a little bit about that opportunity for teachers to have that built into their schedule. And then our spring break is the 17th through the 21st. The 21st through the 22nd, we'll have state UIL CX debates. Super excited about our debate team. These are two very committed students who are on my advisory. You'll get to meet them when they do their presentation, but they were very intimidated by competing against schools that had multiple teams, multiple coaches, and they talked to me about that, and we talked about how to grow our program in debate. But I will tell you, I told them that did not stop you guys from qualifying, so super excited to see them competing at the state meet. And then on the 24th, we'll be back again for a board meeting and World Down Syndrome Day. So lots of things ahead in the tail end of February and March.
Okay, any questions on the district financial reports? No questions? Move on to the consent agenda. Any questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that the board accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Donna Gillum, a second by Dan. All those in favor? Consent agenda passes 6-0. With that, we'll go into closed session. We'll make go into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 55174, discuss the duties of the Board of Trustees. Pursuant to Texas Government Code 55174, discuss the duties of the superintendent. Pursuant to Government Code 55174, discuss the employment and resignation of professional personnel that include teachers and other paraprofessionals. And pursuant to Government Code Section 551072, to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. Any related action will be taken in open session.
copy, sir, on my iPhone. I don't need, I mean, you droid
You
people.
need to
might
have
be
that
great.
paper to turn into the test.
Well,
My email specifically said I could just use an electronic copy.
They want the paper. Okay, it's 9:36 and we're back in open session. Do I hear any motions?
I move to approve negotiation authority to the superintendent for the right-of-way agreement as discussed in closed session.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0. With that, we will adjourn at 9:30.